After my divorce, I finally felt free. I had half my fortune, my Malibu house, and the chance to live on my own terms. To celebrate, I threw a lavish birthday party. Champagne, flowers, music, the whole works. Everyone was laughing, smiling, except for my daughter-in-law, Vanessa. That's when I saw her, slipping something into my drink. Calmly, without a single tremor in my hands, I swapped our glasses the moment she looked away. And within 5 minutes, she collapsed, convulsing on my marble floor. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, hit like, and make sure you're subscribed, because stories like this need witnesses. Let me take you back. 6 months earlier, I divorced Robert after 28 years of marriage. I thought the worst was behind me. Silly me. I had worked hard for everything I owned. The house, the investments, the little luxuries I let myself enjoy. And yet the real battle was just beginning. Robert? He got his yacht, half the portfolio, and whatever dignity he had left after I caught him with his secretary. Again. 3rd time, actually. But I wasn't counting. Marcus, my son, struggled the most. Mom, couldn't you have worked things out? He asked over coffee one day, his voice full of hope and heartbreak. Sweet boy, still believing his father was a good man, when in reality, he'd spent decades lying and cheating. And Vanessa? She never forgave me for the divorce. From day one, she was cold, calculating, always trying to assert dominance over me, over our family. And that birthday? That was when I learned something crucial. Surviving isn't about luck. It's about staying alert, staying calm, and being clever enough to turn the tables on someone who thinks they can outsmart you. The morning of my birthday started like any other, but I had a sense something felt off. The Malibu sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting off the marble floors and making the house sparkle. I could hear the faint hum of the cleaning staff putting final touches on the decorations, while the caterers arranged the food tables. Everything looked perfect. Almost too perfect. Vanessa, as always, arrived early. She had that fake, sweet smile plastered across her face, the one that never reached her eyes. She hugged Marcus, whispered congratulations to me, and pretended to admire the flowers I had chosen for the tables. But I had seen her before. I knew that smile. That smile hid calculation, manipulation, danger. And on this day, I had a feeling I needed to trust my instincts more than ever. Guests began to arrive. Old friends, neighbors, colleagues, all eager to celebrate my newfound freedom and my ability to thrive after divorce. Laughter and conversation filled the air. The scent of fresh pastries mingled with roses and vanilla candles, creating an atmosphere of joy and warmth. And there she was, Vanessa, moving subtly through the crowd, her eyes occasionally flicking toward my glass. I watched her casually, pretending to be absorbed in conversation. That's when I noticed it. The moment she thought no one was looking, her hand brushed the rim of my champagne flute. She whispered something to herself, a slight smirk on her lips. My heart didn't race, it slowed. Every instinct I had screamed danger. I could feel the years of life experience sharpening in that instant, like a radar detecting a threat. I needed to act without alarming anyone. I pretended to laugh at a joke Marcus made, and in the same motion swapped the glasses. Vanessa turned away, unaware that her plan had just failed. I could feel the tension in the room, but no one else sensed it. That's the advantage of being calm. While everyone else celebrated, I was silently in control. As the party continued, she started showing signs of panic, but masked it well. Her eyes darted, her smile tightened, and her attempts to appear normal became more obvious the longer she stayed. I leaned toward a friend, whispering something innocuous about the decorations, all while keeping Vanessa in my line of sight. The psychological battle had begun. And let me tell you, it wasn't just about swapping glasses. It was about patience, watching her reveal herself slowly, understanding her intentions before anyone else knew, and preparing for the perfect moment to act. You see, some people think that boldness is power. I know better. True power comes from strategy and subtlety. Before we move forward, I want to ask, have you ever felt someone plotting against you, but no one believed you? Comment below and tell me how you handled it. And make sure you're subscribed because the story is about to get even more intense. The stage was set. Vanessa had overplayed her hand, and I had all the evidence I needed to turn her own plan against her. And by the end of this night, she would realize exactly what happens when you try to cross someone who refuses to be a victim. The party was in full swing. Laughter echoed through the rooms, clinking glasses, and cheerful music filling every corner of my Malibu home. Guests mingled, unaware of the silent tension between Vanessa and me. She moved gracefully among them, pretending to be cheerful, her smile sharp and calculating. But I could see it, the tiny flickers of anxiety in her eyes. I kept my distance, watching her carefully. Every time she reached for a drink, every glance she cast toward my table, my instincts screamed danger. It wasn't just paranoia. I had lived long enough to know when someone was plotting something cruel. And Vanessa, she was bold, but she underestimated one thing: me. She approached me holding a champagne flute. "Happy birthday," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. But I could hear the underlying tension. I smiled, taking the glass, but in the same motion I switched it with my own. The real glass now safely in my hand, and hers. Well, she wouldn't know for a few moments that her plan had already failed. Guests were laughing, telling stories and celebrating, but my focus remained on Vanessa. Her movements became slightly erratic, a hand tremor here, a forced laugh there. She was trying to appear calm, but I could see her confidence beginning to crack. Every instinct told me she hadn't expected me to be this alert, this prepared. I wandered through the party, chatting with friends, complimenting the decorations, all while keeping her in my peripheral vision. Each time she made a move toward me or my drink, I subtly shifted, always one step ahead. It was almost like a chess game, and I was 10 moves ahead. Then came the moment that sealed everything. She leaned closer to me under the pretense of adjusting a chair, and whispered something just loud enough for me to catch. I nodded politely, pretending not to notice her hand near the glasses. But inside, my heart raced. I knew the danger was real. By now, she was sweating slightly, forcing herself to stay composed. My calmness was a weapon, and I could see it working. She was becoming nervous without even knowing why, because she realized, on some level, that I was aware. She couldn't play the victim this time. Before we move forward, I have to ask, have you ever faced someone you thought you couldn't outsmart? Comment below and share your experience. And make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next is unbelievable. As the evening continued, I prepared for the final moment. Vanessa had shown her hand, and I knew exactly when and how to act. One wrong move on her part, and everything would unravel. The tension was thick, and even though the party seemed cheerful to the outside world, behind my calm eyes, I was ready to turn the tables completely. Tonight, she would learn that underestimating a grandmother who refuses to be a victim is a mistake you only make once. The air in the room felt heavier now. Though the music and chatter continued around us, Vanessa's confidence was slipping. Every laugh she forced, every carefully timed smile was slightly too loud, slightly too rigid. I could feel it. My instincts, honed over decades, told me something was about to happen. Something dangerous. I moved through the crowd, chatting and laughing politely, but my eyes never left her. She glanced at my drink one more time, a fleeting moment of calculation crossing her face. That's when I knew she was going for it. Her hand moved toward my glass again, but this time she was bolder, more deliberate. That's when I acted, subtly, calmly, without drawing attention. I swapped the glasses again, making it look like nothing had happened. My hand brushed hers ever so slightly as we passed, and she tensed. A flicker of panic crossed her eyes, quickly masked by forced composure. My heart beat steadily. I had anticipated every move she could make. I just needed patience. One wrong action for her, one careful step for me, and the truth would come out. I stepped aside and observed. Vanessa thought the coast was clear. She moved toward me again, pretending to check the arrangement of flowers on the table. The guest didn't notice the tension between us, but I could sense it in every small twitch of her fingers, every glance over her shoulder. She was planning, scheming, and the clock was ticking. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Her eyes darted toward my drink again, calculating. I smiled warmly at a friend nearby, pretending to be completely oblivious. At that instant, Vanessa realized something had changed. She paused, hand hovering in midair. her confidence wavering for the first time that evening. Before we continue, I want to ask you, have you ever sensed danger before anyone else did? Comment below and let me know. And make sure you're subscribed because this story is only getting more intense. Vanessa froze, uncertainty flickering across her face. The guests around us remained blissfully unaware, laughing and talking. But the tension between us was electric. My calm had unbalanced her. My patience had made her mistake inevitable. I could see it now. The fear she tried to hide behind her fake smiles. The panic she desperately wanted to mask. I took a slow sip of my champagne, as if nothing was wrong. As if life were perfectly normal. And then it happened. She moved again, her hand trembling slightly as she attempted to reclaim control. But this time it was too late. Every move she had made that evening, every attempt to poison me, had already been anticipated. I had the upper hand, and the final act of this dangerous game was about to unfold. Vanessa had underestimated me, and she didn't yet know that she was about to face the consequences of her arrogance. The moment had arrived. Vanessa, still unaware that her plan had failed, moved closer to me, her hand shaking ever so slightly. I pretended to adjust a napkin on the table, all while keeping my eyes locked on her movements. The tension in the room was invisible to everyone else, but I could feel it thickening like a storm ready to break. She reached toward my drink one last time, thinking no one was watching. But I was ready. Calmly, I swapped the glasses again, this time ensuring that her attempt to poison me was completely thwarted. It was such a small motion, almost imperceptible, but it held the weight of decades of experience, instinct, and caution. One wrong move for her, one precise adjustment for me, and the tables were turned. I leaned slightly toward a friend nearby, laughing at a joke, pretending to be entirely distracted, while Vanessa's eyes flickered with confusion. She realized, just a fraction too late, that something was off. Her confidence, which had been building all evening, began to crumble. The smirk I had seen earlier vanished, replaced by the tiniest hint of panic. She couldn't predict what I would do next, and that uncertainty was eating her from the inside out. Before we move on, I want to ask, have you ever had someone plotting against you and you caught them in the act? Comment below and share your story, and don't forget to subscribe, because this story is far from over. I watched her, pretending to sip my champagne, pretending to laugh at a story someone told. But inside, I was calculating, planning my next move. Vanessa had been careless, too focused on what she thought would be an easy victory. She hadn't counted on me noticing the subtle shifts in her behavior, the nervous glances, the forced gestures. Then came the moment of truth. Vanessa moved toward another guest, trying to play it cool, but the panic was unmistakable in her eyes. Her hands trembled as she tried to rearrange the silverware, hoping no one would notice. And that's when I decided it was time. I leaned close, just enough for her to hear my voice, calm and deliberate. Vanessa, I think you need to sit down for a moment. Her face went pale, and the room felt like it froze around us. For the first time, she realized that her scheme had failed, that I had anticipated every move, and that she was powerless in this situation. The crowd continued their celebrations, oblivious to the drama unfolding inches away from them, but the tension between Vanessa and me was electric. Tonight, she would learn that patience, strategy, and experience are far more powerful than boldness or malice. And by the end of this night, she would understand exactly what happens when someone underestimates a grandmother who refuses to be a victim. The room buzzed with celebration, yet a silent war was being waged just steps away from the guests. Vanessa moved among them, her smile flawless, but her eyes flickered too often. There it was, the tiniest tremor in her hand as she reached for another champagne flute. I noticed it immediately. My heart stayed calm, but my mind raced, predicting her every move. I stepped toward a friend, pretending to adjust a chair. My eyes never left her. She tilted her head slightly, pretending to admire a decoration, but I could see the calculation behind her gaze. She thought she was clever, untouchable. Little did she know, I had already mapped out her strategy hours before the party even began. I sipped my glass slowly, letting the warmth of the champagne mask the tension I felt inside. Every small movement mattered. Her fingers hovered over my drink again, and I let my hand brush hers, barely noticeable. Vanessa flinched ever so slightly. That micro moment told me she realized her plan was fragile, and she hadn't expected resistance. Guests laughed and chatted around us. The piano softly played in the background. The smell of vanilla candles mingled with the scent of fresh flowers. Everything seemed perfect to anyone watching. But behind my calm demeanor, the storm was brewing. Vanessa's next move would determine if this night ended in disaster or justice. I leaned slightly toward a friend, whispering a comment about the decorations, all the while watching Vanessa's subtle panic unfold. She tried to appear collected, but I could see it. The slight tremor of her hand, the quick flicks of her eyes, the shallow breaths she didn't notice she was taking. She was unraveling, and I was in full control. Before we continue, let me ask, have you ever caught someone plotting against you before they even acted? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And make sure to subscribe because the next part will blow your mind. Vanessa moved again, this time toward the dessert table. Her actions were deliberate, rehearsed, the perfect poison attempt. But I had anticipated it. I shifted my stance, casually adjusting a napkin on the marble-top table. The glasses swapped silently, unnoticed by everyone. She smiled, thinking she had won, but I knew differently. She leaned closer to check the seating arrangement, trying to mask her nerves. Her face was calm, her lips curved in a polite smile. But her eyes betrayed her. The guests would see a pleasant party, but I could see the fear setting in behind those eyes. Every instinct I had screamed, "This is it! She's about to make a mistake." And then, the small slip, a hand brushing too close to the wrong glass. A subtle misstep, unnoticed by anyone else, but I caught it instantly. That micro-error was all I needed. The advantage had shifted entirely to me. Vanessa had underestimated a grandmother who refused to be a victim. The calm patience, the quiet observation, and the strategy I had planned for weeks were about to pay off. And by the time she realized what had happened, there would be no turning back. The room felt electric, though no one else could sense it. Guests laughed, clinked glasses, and shared stories, completely unaware that a silent battle of wits was unfolding inches away from them. Vanessa's eyes darted toward my drink again, calculating. She thought she could control the situation, but I could feel her uncertainty creeping in. I moved through the crowd with ease, chatting with friends, complimenting the decorations, and sipping my champagne. All the while I kept my gaze fixed on Vanessa. Every subtle flicker of her eyes, every tremor in her hand, every pause in her movement told me exactly what she was planning next. She didn't know I had anticipated every possible move, and that confidence, that false bravado, would be her undoing. The soft melody of the piano filled the room. Mingling with the smell of vanilla candles and fresh roses, everything seemed perfect on the surface, but beneath it, the tension was palpable. Vanessa tried to maintain her composure, laughing politely at a guest's joke, but her forced smile couldn't hide the panic flickering in her eyes. She was trapped in a web she didn't even see, and I was the one holding the strings. I let my hand hover near my champagne, pretending to adjust a napkin, just enough for Vanessa to notice. Her reaction was instantaneous. A twitch in her shoulder, a blink too fast, a sharp intake of breath. She had realized that I was aware. Her plan was beginning to unravel, and her confidence, so carefully crafted, was crumbling. Before we continue, I want to ask you, have you ever been in a situation where someone underestimated you completely? Comment below and tell me where you're watching from, and make sure you're subscribed, because the next part is going to shock you. Vanessa moved closer to the table, glancing at my drink again. I pretended to sip my champagne casually, watching as she faltered. Her hand hovered in midair, unsure whether to make her move. This hesitation, this tiny crack in her facade, was exactly what I needed. I knew that once she realized she could not manipulate me, panic would take over. Then, the moment of micro-mistake. She brushed against the wrong glass, a subtle error unnoticed by anyone else, but I caught it instantly. My lips curved into a faint smile. Everything was falling into place. I had patience, observation, and strategy on my side, and she had overconfidence and impatience. A deadly combination for someone plotting against me. Vanessa tried to regain control, straightening her posture and forcing a smile. But her eyes betrayed her fear. She was no longer calculating, no longer in control. She was reacting. And that was when I decided to escalate the situation. Not aggressively, not visibly, but with quiet precision. Every subtle movement, every deliberate action of mine would remind her who was really in charge tonight. The tension between us was invisible to the others, but electric to anyone watching closely. She had underestimated a grandmother who refused to be a victim. My calm was a weapon, my patience a shield, and my strategy an unbreakable net. By the time the night ended, Vanessa would understand that audacity and malice could never overcome foresight and experience. The party continued around us, a perfect picture of celebration, but Vanessa and I were locked in a silent game. Her eyes kept flicking toward my glass, scanning the room as if looking for an ally, someone who could save her from the consequences she hadn't yet imagined. I could see it, the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her fingers, the shallow breaths she didn't realize she was taking. I moved with casual grace, smiling at guests, laughing at jokes, all the while watching her. Every micro movement she made told me her plan was unraveling. She thought she had the upper hand. She didn't know I had predicted every move she could make tonight. Her arrogance was about to backfire spectacularly. The faint scent of vanilla and roses mixed with the crisp aroma of freshly poured champagne. The soft glow of candlelight reflected off the marble surfaces, highlighting the subtle quiver in her hand as she reached again toward my drink. I pretended to adjust the table setting, pretending not to notice, but my eyes never left her. This was a delicate dance, and I had mastered it. Before we move on, let me ask you, have you ever faced someone who underestimated you completely? Drop your location in the comments and make sure to subscribe, because the next part is going to be intense. Vanessa tried to recover, moving toward a different part of the room, forcing a laugh at a guest's joke. But her confidence was gone. Every glance she stole in my direction betrayed her growing panic. I could see her calculating, realizing that the plan she thought was flawless had flaws, small but deadly. The more she tried to appear composed, the more visible her fear became. Then, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. She reached for a glass on the edge of the table, slightly too far, fingers brushing against another. A tiny slip, but enough for me to intervene silently. I swapped the glasses once more, my movements subtle, invisible to the guests. I smiled inwardly. She had no idea how carefully I had planned every step. I let a brief pause stretch between us, sipping my champagne as if nothing had happened. Vanessa froze, realizing she had been caught. Her eyes widened, but the rest of her body forced the false calm of a socialite at a party. That split-second hesitation was all I needed to maintain control. The room carried on, unaware of the silent battle, but the tension between Vanessa and me was palpable. Her every movement was now calculated not to fail, but she was reacting, not acting. That gave me the advantage. Her mind raced, trying to figure out how I had outsmarted her at every turn. But the answer was simple: patience, observation, and strategy. By the end of the evening, she would understand that daring to manipulate a grandmother who refuses to be a victim carries consequences, and she would realize that no scheme, no trick, no act of malice could outmatch someone who sees the game from the very beginning. The evening was winding down, but the tension between Vanessa and me was far from over. She tried to blend in with the guests, but every glance she stole in my direction betrayed her growing unease. I could see it. The way her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her napkin, the way she shifted her weight from one foot to another. Panic was creeping in, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I moved calmly toward the dessert table, pretending to admire the chocolate truffles and pastries, while keeping my eyes locked on her. Vanessa tried to approach my drink again, but her hand shook too much. That tiny tremor told me everything I needed to know. She was no longer in control. I leaned slightly, adjusting the table, and subtly swapped the glasses one last time. Every move I made was precise, silent, invisible to the party guests, yet it was enough to maintain my advantage. The soft music from the piano filled the background. Guests laughed, oblivious to the silent battle that had been raging all night. Candles flickered in their holders, casting shadows that danced across the marble floor, almost mirroring the tension between Vanessa and me. She tried to regain composure, forcing a smile, laughing at someone's joke. But it was hollow. I could see the fear in her eyes, the realization dawning that her plan had failed. Before we continue, I want to ask, have you ever faced someone who underestimated you completely? Comment below and share where you're watching from, and make sure to hit subscribe, because the next part will reveal just how far this revenge goes. Vanessa's panic became more obvious. She glanced around, trying to find someone to distract me, someone who could rescue her from the inevitable. But no one noticed the tension except me. Her movements grew more erratic, and she reached for another glass, but her hesitation betrayed her. She froze, realizing she couldn't predict my next move. I smiled, casually sipping my champagne, pretending to be distracted by the conversation around me. The calm I projected was a weapon, and it worked. Vanessa was unraveling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I could almost hear her mind racing, calculating, trying to figure out how I had stayed one step ahead. Then came the moment of truth. She accidentally knocked a small plate off the table. It clattered against the marble floor, drawing the attention of nearby guests. Vanessa's eyes widened in terror, not because anyone saw her, but because she realized the night had slipped out of her hands completely. Every tiny misstep, every flicker of doubt she had ignored, had now added up to her complete loss of control. I moved closer, my calm demeanor masking the thrill of victory I felt inside. Vanessa's confidence had evaporated, replaced by a cold, creeping fear. She had learned too late that underestimating a grandmother with patience, strategy, and experience comes at a price. By the end of this evening, she would remember exactly who she was dealing with, and so would everyone else. The room seemed to carry on in a dreamlike state, but for Vanessa it had become a nightmare she could not escape. The balance of power had shifted completely, and there was no turning back. The party was ending, but the final act had only just begun. Vanessa stood frozen near the dessert table, her forced smile gone, replaced with panic that she could no longer hide. Every guest thought it had been a normal evening, a lovely birthday celebration, but only I knew the truth. I stepped closer, holding my glass calmly, my eyes never leaving hers. The calm patience I had maintained all night now became the final blow. Vanessa's trembling hand reached for my drink one last time, but it was too late. She realized her plan had completely failed, and I had been in full control from the very start. The subtle movements, the careful observation, the micro cliffhangers I had orchestrated, they all led to this moment. She wanted to act, to manipulate, to intimidate, but she had nothing left. My strategy had stripped her of every advantage, and her panic became visible to anyone who looked closely. I smiled gently, speaking as if nothing had happened. "It's over," I said softly, my voice carrying calm authority. Vanessa's eyes widened, the terror in them unmistakable. She had underestimated me, a grandmother who refused to be a victim. And tonight, she had learned the hard way that patience, strategy, and observation can outmatch arrogance and deceit. Before we end, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated and surprised everyone? Comment below and tell me where you're watching from, and make sure you subscribe for more stories where justice is served. Vanessa left shortly after, speechless and shaken. The guests never knew the danger that had been lurking among the laughter and clinking glasses. I stayed back, finishing my champagne, calm as ever, knowing that sometimes the quietest, most patient people are the ones who deliver the hardest lessons. And tonight, I had reminded everyone exactly that.